Okay, hey, nice to see you all. I was actually hearing some tales of how how few people showed up to some of the earlier sessions. So I'm glad that a few people were able to come over. My name is Rod Apeldoorn. I work with Priologic on the EasyRTC project. And this talk is going to be on building a self-hosted WebRTC project where you can control everything yourself from the client side all the way down to the server, all within house, and to be able to build whatever applications you need on that. This is going to be more of a technical talk, but not to scare too many people away. I've tried to make it so that we can do mostly cutting and pasting of code, or just going from one working bit of code to the next, rather than actually me accidentally typing in wrong lines. So why don't I just start things off with a little bit of Priologic. Priologic is incorporated in BC, 2013. We're actually over in Victoria, so just a few hours away by flight. It is actually, as far as the weather goes, it's pretty similar to the Bay Area, San Francisco, just a few degrees colder for the highs and lows. Our company itself, we're actually, I think we're at about 25 or so. We do mostly work on the services side, where we do work with Cisco systems as our majority, for the majority of bread and butter. But then we came into this thing of having WebRTC, or hearing about WebRTC, and we wanted to branch out and try some things on our own on that. And so that's kind of where the EasyRTC side came from. We do agile development, and that's about it. What I did want to also kind of go through is a little bit about what WebRTC is, kind of in a single pager. Can I just have a quick show of hands as far as who does not consider themselves fairly knowledgeable about WebRTC? Okay, excellent. So I just kind of like a one-pager. I'm not intending to go through everything about WebRTC. It's kind of impossible, at least in the time frame that we have. What I was going to do instead was kind of give you a line item for why WebRTC is so useful. So WebRTC stands for Web Real-Time Communications. It is a specification put out by the W3C and the IETF with several big goals in mind. One of the first goals, access to user's camera and microphone using a process called Get User Media. So for first time, using pure JavaScript, we're able to ask the end user, can I get access to your microphone? Can I see what your camera is? And be able to deal with those streams. And that was actually one of the first things that was completed, and there's actually a lot of neat little projects that are around just that aspect, not even dealing with communications or peer-to-peer, but just what are some of the cool things you can do with getting a picture in, or being able to do audio stuff. Or for instance, I saw one project where the whole thing was how do you tune a guitar. And so they would have some stuff where you just actually write straight in your web browser, do a string. Okay, nope, it's got to go up or down a little. And so they had some stats for going along with that. Peer-to-peer communications is one of the other goals. And that is kind of what I consider almost the coolest part, because I'm kind of the server-side lead on the EasyRTC project. So I'm always concerned of, okay, can I get everybody talking to each other? And so what peer-to-connection allows is the ability for one peer to talk to another using sending video, audio, or data streams, or a combination thereof. And the goal is to try to get that to happen by breaking through all the different firewall messes that are out there. And so that's one of the goals of that. I'm not really going to go through all the issues on that yet, but maybe I'll do a thing on turn servers and such in a little bit, where there is some gotchas that you always have to kind of be aware of if you're going to be starting a big project with WebRTC. The data channels is a cool one as well, and this is one that's actually getting even better and better in recent iterations in the browser. It didn't get as much play at the beginning of WebRTC, but now it's getting a lot of effort put into it, and already we're seeing great dividends on that. We'll actually be talking a little bit about some file transfer capabilities in EasyRTC. And it's also being used for other things. One I was just hearing about, has anybody heard of uProxy? uProxy is a thing put out by the University of Washington. And the idea there is they're using data channels within a WebRTC data channel in order to build a web proxy. So the idea there is you can create you would go to their application, and then somebody else who might be in a situation, of course it's always played as censorship, so they might be in an area where they're not able to gain access to the web. So using just the WebRTC data channel connection, they're able to bypass censors and firewall issues and so on, and be able to gain access via a proxy system using just pure data channels. I think that's pretty cool. So that's kind of something that's it's currently in a closed development right now, but it's gained a little bit of press a few months ago. One of the biggest features of WebRTC is also that it's plug-in free. So this is where WebRTC is often seen as allowing people to gain access to that last mile of, if you're building an application, you don't need to worry what the other person has installed. As long as they have a browser, they should be able to use it. And so that's what the big goal of the plug-in free side is. WebRTC combines fairly nicely with other new technologies. HTML5, there's some new things in there. WebGL and WebAudio, where you can actually use just JavaScript in order to manipulate video and audio. And there's some neat projects that are going along in that realm. As far as client support goes, we've got Google Chrome, which is Google's being one of the top guys that are pushing it out, and it's actually one of the most stable I found for doing the development on. Although Firefox is one of the other top ones, and they've actually been better off on the data channel support up until recently for Chrome finally adding some stuff. There's also client support in many media servers that are being developed, SIP gateways and servers, and different programming APIs. Lots of different companies are coming up with ways of putting in WebRTC directly from a number of different programming languages, including on the iOS side and on C++ and so on, and we'll be talking a little bit about that. Here's just a quick little browser stats, just to show you within the last, this is just from the last 3 years of all the changes that has happened. Some people aren't always kind of familiar with just how much Chrome has kind of taken over in just that time span. The next one kind of gives a little bit better numbers on it. It's also showing not only just how much Chrome has gotten bigger, but mobile in general. So this one is actually just in the last 2 years, mobile browsing has more than doubled. And so you start taking into that effect of now you got all these people on mobile, hopefully having a WebRTC enabled browser. There's that many more clients that can now talk to your app. One of the top questions that we always get asked is, why is EasyRTC even there? Where a lot of people start off with WebRTC, it's easy, it handles all its connections. Why is there a need for EasyRTC? And one of the top reasons is that WebRTC lacks, really by design, a good signaling specification or any signaling specification. And the main reason for that is there's so many different types of applications that I can't even imagine them being able to agree on a single one, because there's ones that are great for talking out to the SIP. There's ones like ours where we actually do like a pure WebRTC play. And then there's other ones where you might want to have a signaling that's more, not necessarily for a server situation, but signaling just between two things that already know about each other. So there's lots of neat things that can be done there. The other reason for EasyRTC is that when we first started developing it last year, there were no other peer-to-peer solutions. If you go back, I'm sure that many of you here in the room were actually started off or kind of looked into WebRTC last year, and in the last year things have dramatically improved. But this time last year, where there was no open peer-to-peer solutions out there, we tried to create our own. Just as a demo, and we had ran into roadblocks left and right for all the different things that would interrupt the communication from one point or another, or the browsers being able to talk to each other nicely. That actually came in later on. They didn't actually work that way for a while. So the fact that there was nothing out there is one of the reasons why we kind of went, okay, let's put this out and make it a little bit easier for other people to at least get a starting point. And the other reason why, kind of thought WebRTC was really cool, and we wanted to do something with it. And so actually working with it for a year, it's actually been one of the most rewarding years on the programming side I've had for being able to work on something that's, I'm normally on the server side, so I got to do like businessy type of things like reporting and so on. Doing media, I'm loving it for just handling all these all the signaling and such you have to worry about on that realm. So it's kind of a nice change for me, and I'm sure it's, if you're all here, you're kind of probably seeing it as bleeding edge and leading edge type of things to say, let's give it a go, and it's kind of exciting what it rolled. Some of the tenets of EasyRTC, and these kind of break it apart from some of the other options that are out there. One of them, general web developers should be able to use it. So this is not just on the client side, but also on the server side. We have JavaScript on both ends. Somebody with just general HTML and JavaScript experience and some good server, you should kind of know a little bit about servers before you begin, should be able to come up with something. Cross-browser issues should be hidden whenever possible. There are certain capabilities that one browser has or doesn't have, but whenever possible, the user shouldn't have to care. And even the developer shouldn't have to care. Signaling should include common application logic, where a lot of WebRTC projects all share a similar type of things that they need. The most basic is, can I make a call? But there's other things as well, such as we do with like rooms and so on. I'll kind of go into that in a little bit. The server can be local, not just cloud-based. And I kind of wrote the booing to end because I thought that there would be a lot of cloud guys here, but I suspect that there might be a few. The idea there is, it's my belief that if you're doing development, it's nice to actually have development where you can control all the sides, where you can see, if you can pull out your packet sniffer, for instance, and see what's happening on the client, what's happening on the server, what's happening on all the realms, be able to determine where a problem lies. Yes?
I am assuming that the server can be cloud-based.
Absolutely. There's no reason why it can't. We actually host ours out in the cloud. For a few of our situations that we're in, and I'll talk a little bit about one of the architectures for one of our products to kind of go into that. But it can be out in the cloud. It can be on, and in this case, I'm going to be having it on my own laptop. You can have it within an internal server environment. One of the popular areas might be to have it in kind of the gateway, where if you're in an organization, you might want to have it as something that's both publicly and internally accessible, just to make it as a way that people can kind of come in. There's a few other realms where it can be used, but can help out. One of the other tenets, applications can be tailored for existing architectures. What that means is there's ways where we give you the general ways of, hey, let's just make it work fast, and then a whole bunch of ways where you can customize it to what you need. So there's ways to interrupt things both on the client and the server side to go in for, we'll just say like most common might be a directory system, where if you need to connect up to an LDAP server for being able to figure out who's available or who's online, or authentication, all that stuff. So if you need to be able to connect in, you can. This is just a very, very quick architectural drawing. I just drew up really fast when I realized I didn't have one, at least not this high level. Just to kind of show you what the things is as far as the server versus, we got two clients. Between the clients, we've already got the WebRTC type of communications, where it's transferred using like RTP and such. That happened between the two clients, but that's after the fact. Prior to that, between the clients and the server, we have our own signaling system that we've created, and it's broken up into three main categories: authorizations, EasyRTC commands, and EasyRTC messages. Without the authorization, all the others are ignored. And EasyRTC commands, those are the ones that we make. So those aren't, you can interrupt them if you really need to, but those ones are the core to how EasyRTC works. That includes how the WebRTC offers and candidates get transferred, and a number of the other kind of internal things for instance, we have a method to determine who all is in a room so that you can see everybody that's in the same room with you. That would be an EasyRTC command. The EasyRTC messages, those are ones where we take a step back and let the application logic flow, where you can write whatever you want there. So you can create your own commands that go back and forth, and you can do that on the server side, and so that they can talk to the clients, and you can even do it from the client side. So you can write a JavaScript client library that says that sends a command to the other one, do something, and it will do it. One example that we'll show later is we'll be doing a security camera application, just as a quick little demo. And one of the things we're going to have in there is motion detection. And we're going to have motion detection so that the client, or the camera, can tell the monitor, hey, there's motion over here, pay attention to me. And so that's going to be actually an application level EasyRTC message. Some of the, I'll kind of break up the client and the server features directly. Client features hides browser compatibility. There's several convenience methods that are available. For instance, for selecting media streams, setting bandwidth and dimensions of video, listing of peers, peer-to-peer messaging, peer-to-server messaging. By the way, the peer-to-server messaging, we have actually I guess I can mention that a little bit on the file transfer interface. We do have a fallback method. So you can use data channels, but you don't have to. If you don't have data channels available, it'll revert back to using WebSockets. And the idea there is that rather than having a peer-to-peer with a data channel, with WebSockets, it goes to our server and we can just do relaying. We also have error handling to be able to handle a variety of the different errors that you might be able to come up with. Trust me, there's a few that you can get through, especially around camera issues and connection issues. We also have a file transfer interface that was just recently added in. That's got data channels with WebSocket fallback. It's got a drag and drop handler. We were able to be transferring 1,000 meg files back and forth with each other. Very cool. We've also got this has actually recently been renamed. It was, if you've used EasyRTC before, it used to be called init managed, but I kind of always figured that was a weird name. This is no better of a weird name, but at least it kind of says it's easy. It's the Easy App method, and it will allow you to use as a single command to create some common WebRTC applications. That just only got changed, so it's actually not even in the code that I have on my laptop. So we'll still see the old method, but I just kind of want to make sure that the new way was in the PowerPoint there. On the server side, we wanted to make sure it's easy to install. We want to make sure that when you are writing your code, you can actually continue to writing code in JavaScript. And I'm going to actually be talking a little bit about what EasyRTC is based off of. It's a platform called node.js that's coming up in a few slides, and I'll give you some of the benefits of using the node.js. But I'll tell you that when we first started coming up with this, my first thought was, oh crap, JavaScript on a server. And then I was actually on my no pile for a while, and I started looking at all the different possibilities. And Node.js just kept on coming up as being one of the fastest methods to be able to handle signaling. And so I had to step back, swallow my pride, and say, okay, JavaScript on the server it is, and it's going to introduce a few gotchas. And so I'm actually going to be, in a while from now, I'll actually be talking about how you can do coding within node.js, because it actually is a little bit tricky in some realms for people who aren't used to this. Okay, the server also does things like manages applications, rooms, authentication, sessions, and connections. Within EasyRTC, we kind of have a hierarchy of, we have a server level, and then off of the server level we go down to an application level for, you can have, on a server you can have multiple applications. And the applications are self-contained. So you can't have users talking to other users that are in a different application. And that's on purpose, just to keep different rules set up. If you need to, you can always actually override it, or there's actually ways to almost do custom almost everything. But I wouldn't really recommend it. So it's, the idea is we have applications. Each application has its own options, its own names. You might have different people in there. You might have different rules in there. And vast majority of installations, you'll probably actually just have a single application. Actually, maybe two applications. You might have like your full application for whatever it is you're doing, and you might have an administration application that's running on the same server that might have different rules, different authentication requirements, and so on. Within each application, you can have multiple rooms, and you can have multiple connections. And a connection can be in multiple rooms at the same time, or in no rooms. And the idea of the room is it's a container for that. When you are inside the room, you get to see everybody else who is inside the room. We also have session support now. That's being added in, and that's kind of cool. And then we also have it so it's event-driven. This makes it a little bit easier if you're actually going to be writing code against it to be able to say, I'll kind of go through some of the events that we have, but for instance, we have a on-room join event. So if somebody comes in and joins a room, you can actually do stuff on the server side that does something that says, okay, this so-and-so has joined the room. What do we do in this case? You can actually prevent them from joining the room in that case if you wanted to, or you can do some logging or all sorts of different things. So that's a kind of nifty way of being able to handle it. EasyRTC, when you first actually install it, you get a whole bunch of different demos that involve things like instant messaging. It's actually one of those rare things where we have instant messaging as being one of the most common things, but I was kind of surprised where it's not in some of the other parcels out there. And it's going, okay, we'll make sure it's in there. It's easy to do. So we also have a simple audio-video demo. This is the one that it currently uses that init managed, but it's the easy app method of let's just create a connection and create a system that can be up and running. We have HD video support. HD video is a little bit tricky. You'll notice that let's see, look and see if I can see the HD. Yeah, you notice that the HD video, we got a bunch of little check marks as far as which browsers things will work in or not. I'm not 100% sure if I haven't actually checked on if this has been updated in a while, but it's one of those things where in order to do HD video, you actually have to do some stuff within the, when you're actually requesting the video from the get user media. So it's, there's an extra little plays in there. Screen sharing, and I say in screen sharing in Chrome, it is supported. We have demos on it. But it's one where everybody always asks, can you do screen sharing in WebRTC? And the answer is yes, but it's got so many gotchas in there that I don't know how usable it's going to be for a while, or if it's going to be very usable. One of the problems with the screen sharing is that, at least if you're going to be creating your own demonstration app, is they actually require that the server that you're talking to be on SSL. They don't have this requirement for any of the other things with WebRTC, but you're allowed to share your video without SSL. But if you want to share your screen, you'd need it. That's one of those weird things that they actually don't actually put it out there. The other thing is that you can only kind of request the entire monitor. You can't request areas and so on. And you don't have the support for things like moving the mouse around and such. And so it's great for a few different applications, but not necessarily for what many people think as being a let's take over somebody's desktop. That being said, on the WebRTC side, there are projects going on in the remote control area for changing the remote control the clients. So you can install like a program like I think it's Real VNC. Where you can install that on your own system, but you might be able to connect to it using a pure browser, and they would be able to control what the video is. But even from the endpoint, as far as the client goes, you can be for your browser. I think that's pretty cool. So that still is WebRTC with screen sharing, but it's within the browser controlling it. I think it needs a little bit more work. Multi-party chat. We have a multi-party chat demo. If you've seen our EasyRTC, where we've got our talk.com, where we have the 4 different windows being able to talk to each other, we provide a simple demo of how to do just that. Not to the same level, but it's actually still pretty cool just to say we've got that. The way that the multi-party chat works is it's not actually, there's no media servers involved. What it is that each long day, each person who is in the room gets to see each other person, and each one of them opens up a media connection to each other. So if you have 4 people in the room, you have connections going back, forth, back, forth, back and forth. And that's the main reason why we limit it just to 4, because it's actually an exponential problem, where you have bandwidth limitations, where the more people you add, it's the more bandwidth that gets used. And you have problems with processing speed, where all those streams of encoding and decoding, it can be a little bit troublesome. Even with the 4-person demo on many slower computers and slower like handheld devices, it can definitely start lagging out. The data channel demos and the file sharing demos are also included within EasyRTC. I kind of alluded that we're actually we have an upcoming version. Many of the things that I'm showing here are actually going to be in the new version. This is one where it's been a long time coming. It's when we first made EasyRTC, the idea was to make it as an easy, the goal that I was given was make it as fast and easy to install as possible. And so we did that by creating what's called a node application. And so we built an application where you can just download it and then start running it after you're writing 2 commands and you're up and running. The problem with this was, as time goes on, we started realizing that there was, I guess there's kind of the evergreen problems of where people would want to update their version of EasyRTC, but now it would be intermixed with their own programming. So we've now, one of our top main things that we've switched is to make it as a proper full node module. That means that you can include EasyRTC without actually having to manipulate it or touch it at all. And you have a separate within your own server-side application, you'd have it completely separated out. There's no code sharing. And that's actually where you see that number 1 that's written there. That's actually that point. I just realized I actually must have rewritten that line. So where it says number 1, it's supposed to say now a node module. Number 1 reason. Okay. It is entering beta next week. Currently, it is available as alpha. You can actually download and run it now. It's also available through NPM, and I'll be discussing what NPM is in a short little while. It stands for Node Packet Manager, and it is an easy way to actually download and install stuff that's node-based, and it actually is a pretty powerful system. So the new features that are in the new one is event-driven, custom authentication methods, server options handler. So we have methods of setting servers. Remember how I said we had the thing of applications, and then you have rooms, and you had a server? Each one of those levels can actually have separate options that are associated with them. So if you have multiple applications, each one of them can have separate options. Or if you have different rooms, you can have different options for one room versus another. And the number of options is currently limited, but it's going to be starting to grow as we actually start adding on more. We also have custom fields. This is where on the server side, you can associate, it's kind of a way of setting a variable to be associated to something. We currently allow you to set variables associated to the application, to the connection, or to the room, or to the session. And one of the options in those variables is we actually have a to share option, which allows you, after you set that variable, it can actually then be put out to the end client as well. So that way you can set something on the application side that actually gets sent through EasyRTC's internal methods for handling things. You're still actually allowed to do your own methods, but it's way we kind of figured we would want to have some ways of doing things internally with that. We also allow for custom fields. This is where within your Client, you can actually set some fields in your client that everybody else that can know about that client. So if they're in the same room, you can have just JavaScript to JavaScript variables so that they can know about each other. We have delta lists. The idea with delta lists in the previous version, we had a scalability problem where when you actually started, it would actually, whenever somebody joined a room, it would send out to the client a whole listing of every single person that's in that room. But it would send that for every single person, every single time that somebody joined. So that's just fine when you're dealing with 4 or 5 connections. But we're getting into the situation now where you might have a couple hundred people potentially in the room. You don't want to be transferring that huge list every single time. So that's where the new version where it kind of helps out with that. We also are adding in file transfer and the session support. I already talked about the file transfer. The session support uses if anybody's familiar with Node, there is one of the top packages available for Node is one called Express. And so we have support for the Express session management. And that is needed for if you have somebody just to be able to keep track of the same person as they go from one page to the next on your site. When we first wrote EasyRTC, we figured it's WebSocket based, so a lot of these WebSocket based systems are, you have one page, that one page is your entire application, but the reality is a lot of times you want to split things off, having one section here, one section here, so a person might actually go through a real link to go to another page and you can want to keep track of them. So that's where the session support comes in. We do have support via our Google Groups page. So if you're looking for it, it's actually just over here, but you don't need to necessarily write it down because it's actually available on almost all of our demos. If you actually download EasyRTC, it's available. It's just one of the top links on the demos, and it's also on a README. So I know it's a weird link to find whenever you're going to Google Groups, but this is kind of our community site. If you're looking for support on the open source side, this is the way to go. As much as I'd love to answer the all the other emails, we've got bills to pay as well. Okay, I was going to tell you what node.js was. Node.js is a software platform that is built upon the Google V8 engine. And that is the engine that's they had within Google for running JavaScript, and they released that engine open source. And I don't think that they even actually expected it to actually have what happened, where there was a fellow over at Joint who ended up taking this package and decided, okay, we're going to make a system out of this for being able to run JavaScript on the command line. And then from there, it became a phenomenon where it's actually now one of the most popular new pieces of software available. So if you're actually looking at what should I learn next, Node is actually one of the top new things that's very, very popular. You see it everywhere. One of the examples that I saw was, okay, you've got node.js and running in everything from telephones, where actually I've seen some commercial telephones now running Node inside the telephone. There's embedded support, but one of the top areas is actually within servers, where one of the things that they found with node.js was that it handles signaling type of servers very, very well, where it is based, because it's a non-blocking I/O, meaning that processes get run and then they get handed off when it's got something else to do. It's able to handle a lot of different things all at the same time. Think about your web browser and all the different things that the JavaScript actually has to run at the same time on your web browser. There's all the on something events that it has to worry about. So on click, on mouse moving, on things going on over top, it actually has to handle all that simultaneously. So that same, system is become very popular on the server side. So a couple of the top server things are the Express and the Socket.io. If you're not familiar with WebSockets, it's a method of connecting, we'll say a client to a server in a method that the connection does not go away. It is actually always live. And it is lighter weight in speed just heavier in socket usage. So what it means with that is if I need to actually send out a message, it does not rely on the weights of TCP in order to kind of go, okay, I need to connect in. It's actually already got all the connections established. It just sends it out and then gets responses back. It's dramatically faster. One of our first versions of EasyRTC was actually did some stuff based on the Google App Engine where WebSockets were not available. And when we switched over, it made all the difference. It was actually one of their top performance increases and it was one of the things where it's very important is when WebRTC, you have the, they talk about this, if you're not familiar with this, don't worry about it too much, but when two connections need to talk to each other, there's a whole variety of offers and candidates that need to be transferred from one to the other. And it could stretch, I've seen it up to 20 or 30 different messages that can get sent back and forth. And if you have to wait for each one of them to do separate connections, it can take a long time. And as soon as we switched over to using the WebSockets, it made a huge, huge performance gain. Okay, the other thing with Node is it's lightweight and efficient. I said it was in telephones. You also have it running on, we had running on a Raspberry Pi. And it can also be running on major servers, so it's that robust. Excellent module system, where the guys that wrote the module system, actually the guy who wrote node.js actually stepped down last year. And the guy who wrote the module system took over. And I got to say, after I heard that, I was going, that's actually an excellent guy to choose, because the module system that they wrote for that is, after you start getting used to it, it kind of blows a lot of the other methods of how do I grab software packages from outside and bring them in out. It's sort of like if you're used to things on the Linux side, where you have to download package managers and such on the Linux side. It's kind of like that, but it's even easier. Okay, there's a large number of freely available modules. It's got a very large open source community based off of it, and there's a number of modules that deal with everything that you can think of. If you're thinking of connecting up to an LDAP server, there is a module for how to do that. If you're thinking of connecting up to a, some sort of a database, there's whatever database, name one in your head, they have it probably for how to connect up to it. Email, and of course we've got the web and the and socket stuff. And of course it's highly popular. So I'm going to go through the installation of EasyRTC. This is EasyRTC in a nutshell. This will actually, if you follow these steps, you'll have a working version of EasyRTC right on your laptop. If you have one, you're welcome to actually go ahead and do it right now. It probably would take you about 10 minutes. First step, install node.js. There's packages for node.js available for every operating system. Next step is you need to download files from our server example, where we have a GitHub repository. And in our GitHub repository, and what you do currently is you actually press on the down arrow when you're there and choose the alpha branch. And in the alpha branch, there is a server example folder there, and including a few different files. And really, actually, you just need the 2 files, but you might want to grab the other ones that are in there just for completeness. And that's enough to get it going. Then from there, in a command line, wherever you put those files, anywhere on your drive, as long as your node is installed, you go in your command line to the same folder, and you write a command called npm --install. And what that does is, see there's that package.json file? That is a file that's used by Node to kind of tell it what all is happening within your system, or within your application, and what modules it requires. It has a bunch of other information in there. We'll take a look at that a little bit later. And then from there, it will actually download all the modules it needs, including the full EasyRTC package. And then from there, you can start EasyRTC by just typing in the command node --server, and you're up and running. And you can browse the examples, and you can even take a look at additional documentation that is listed there as well. Okay, live Node.js example. Okay, this is the troublesome part of the journey today. We'll see if we can do live stuff. And okay. Oh, what you see right here, by the way, I always have this running. is I'd love to see what my CPU usage is and network usage is at all times whenever I'm doing my development, just to see, okay, things are going off the scale or not. However, I've not actually really needed this in the last maybe 4 months. Things have gotten that much better for how the browsers have been running. That used to have things where it would just suddenly spike off and take off, and you'd have to figure out what's going on, and it would be that for some reason a bunch of extra connections were made or something. Let's take a look here. Okay, what I'm going to do, and okay, what I'm actually in here is a. Now I'll kind of zoom it in a little. Okay. Sorry, this thing is a little bit weird for going into, we're in a like 1024 by 768 mode that my computer does not like. Okay, well, we'll deal with it. Okay, so here I am in the command line. I use a different shell, but this will work just as well within using the standard Windows command, our CMD file, our command. So in order to get into Node, you can just type in Node. And now we're actually in Node land. We can type in standard JavaScript. For instance, I can do a console.log. Hi. And what you see here afterwards is 2 lines. The first is the result of having console.log run. The other one is one where I forget what the command is to disable it. But what Node does is to whatever variable you type in there or whatever line you type in there, it will send you back the result. So if I type in, let's say var I is equal to 4, and I didn't type in I, it would type in the result of whatever it was. And so ignore those undefined and such when we're going through this. So, but this is kind of just to show you that this is actually, Node is actually running JavaScript directly. And we can type in JavaScript all up to the wazoo. Let's do the old set timeout command. The set timeout command is one of the most popular ones for JavaScript guys to actually use as an example, because all it does is it allows you to write a function and have a delay for so many milliseconds. So we'll go for a function like that. I'll do another hi. And then from there, comma, and we'll say 4 seconds. So we actually have to do 4,000, and I'm hoping this will work. Okay, excellent. There. So what actually happened here is the first thing it did was that first little bit is actually the object that gets returned by the set timeout. But you notice that the hi did actually come back after 4 seconds. One of the reasons why I'm showing you how to go into the Node land is it's actually, if you've ever actually tried to do any development and you actually need to say, I need to test out this one little bit of JavaScript, you can often just do it just by typing in Node and then filling it in and seeing if it works or not. It's a great little development tool just for going, okay, what's the order of different parameters or whatever. All right. Okay, so that is my Node example. Next thing. Okay, EasyRTC. Okay, no package manager example, and then EasyRTC. Okay. Oh, okay. Well, I actually had code for a Node example. Sorry, it's been a long day. If I go off in the wrong direction, just feel free to steer me in. Oh, by the way, I don't know if I really mentioned this. This is actually a longer session, so if you actually have any questions and such, don't try to wait to the end. Just let me know. So we'll just take a look at the Node example here. Okay, for instance, here is the package.json file, just to give you an example of what a package.json file looks like. In this example, we've got just given a name. I've got this extra line called private is equal to true. Here, I'll actually zoom in a little bit more so you can see. So we've got this private is equal to true line here. That just makes sure that it does not accidentally get published. One of the key things about Node and the Node Package Manager is you can actually publish whatever you write. And it goes out to the web, and it's available for everybody. And so you might not want to do that. It takes a few steps to do it, but I usually like to add that whenever I remember, just so I don't do it by accident. The key part that is the most important part of any Node application that you'll be doing with the package.json is these two lines here for the dependencies. What this is listing is an express and a socket.io dependency. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run this. And actually, 1 second, I'm just going to see if I have internet here. Okay, excellent. I do have internet. That actually both complicates things and makes things easier. So I am going to, one of the things you'll notice in here for the folder is there's a folder in here called node_modules. All packages get installed into this. So I'm just going to rename this folder. Okay, just a nice little name there. And the reason for renaming it is just in case the internet fails on me, I can rename it back again. What we're going to run here is a program called the npm. After you install Node, it should actually be available to you. npm space install. And what npm install does is it takes a look at that package.json. And do you remember those lines that were in there for the express and the socket.io? It now goes out to the internet and goes, I want these. And now it's installing.
So npm is the package manager, right?
Yes. And now what it's done is it's gone ahead and installed those. I want to actually open up the folder and here, I'll just, okay, crap, I'm in weird mode here. Okay. So you'll see there's actually a folder in here called Express and another folder called socket.io. There's also a folder in there called .bin, and the idea there is that some modules actually have a method inside of themselves to try to create a binary made for your own operating system. So in this case, I believe that Express actually makes a binary for Windows, and so that's what goes in there. And now we'll go ahead and run it. I just got a quick little thing here for saying server started. Okay, I got a problem here. Why don't I take a look at the code and see what the problem might be? Hey, you're getting ahead of me. So yes, we actually have, actually this is the wrong folder here. Actually, that was actually a full thing there. What's going on? Okay, that can't be the same version. Okay. Okay, so yeah, so what we actually have here is all the lines needed for setting up this program, which is actually going to create a full web server right on your system. You can see there's just a few lines here that are of real importance. We've got things for being able to load in the HTTP node base module, an express module, a socket.io. But really what I want to do is point your eyes down to that port number, so you always have to kind of keep in mind that. So why don't we just change it over to port 80. Whenever we release, we always try to keep it as, remember to re-put it to port 8080, just because so many people can't run things on port 80 on their own computers, so it just kind of gets that one little block that people might have. So we went ahead and saved that, and we will run it. What wrong? We're running node space server. It's running again. And there we are. And what this one does is it actually looks in a folder called static, just for this in here. And you'll notice that there's this one line here for saying it's greater than this version number. By the way, as far as version numbers going, currently the current alpha, we're currently calling it version 0.10. But since it's such a major change, as soon as we actually are feature complete, it is going to become the 1.0. And which everybody always is, for those that like version numbers, it's actually very important. And it is actually a big increase in all the functionality as well. So if you actually see it as 0.10 now, it will be 1.0 later on. I just want to make that clear. One of the other things that we do that I always try to remember to do this, but I don't always, is write in the version numbers of the packages that I care about. And what this does is that within Node, generally the major versions and the secondary ones are ones that could be potentially breaking. So I usually try to go through the first 2 points and then do a dot star, because the dot star is usually things like bug fixes and such that can be in there. And I try to keep up and see if I have to update that to do some checks to see if there's newer ones that are coming out. Okay, so now that we have EasyRTC there, why don't we do that same thing of renaming the folder. And do the npm install here. And by the way, those files that you see there are the same files, remember from a couple slides ago where I was mentioning do these steps in order to install? This is that same folder structure. And so we've now got EasyRTC now up and running. Why don't I go ahead and just run node server. We've now got some EasyRTC statuses and going, okay, we've got the server up and running. We'll open up the web browser again. Okay, and remember we got the problem with the ports, but why don't I just go to port 8080. What's going on there? Okay, it is actually, I actually just copied the same index.html file. Why don't we actually try this just to prove it's working then? Okay, is it demo? Okay, this is where it's the embarrassing part of the part, so why don't I actually switch over and take a look and see what's actually going on with the code. I had this tested. By the way, whenever I'm typing NP, it's actually just a short form to go into Notepad. I don't see anything in there why it wouldn't work. Okay, what's in the static folder in this one is this index.html. So I'll just put in a couple extra exclamation points to show it. But what's supposed to happen is that you should actually have availability to actually grab the EasyRTC demos as well, unless I actually disabled those demos in the code for the, did I? No. Okay, when you install EasyRTC, one of the options is for it to actually take over your Express and overrule what the /demos, or you can actually even rename it if you wanted to, and it will suddenly become EasyRTC demos. And actually might have been something I did there. Oh, it's not, of course, it's not even running. There we are. Okay, I can only imagine it was something to do with cache or something. Okay, just welcome to live. Okay, so this is now, we're now into just kind of proof that the EasyRTC is up and running. When you first install this, it should just work just that easily without the cache issues. Why don't we go ahead and do a quick simple audio video demo. what it'll come up with is allow deny on the camera. We'll go ahead and allow that and see. There we go. So that's going to be this camera right here. And you a quick little wave. Yeah, maybe we actually should start a full wave. By the way, actually, maybe I'll just take this chance while I'm setting this one up to just mention that how important camera quality is. Where a lot of people like to associate how good a picture is to how good the connection is. And the camera actually plays a bigger role in that than many people think. Where in this case, this is a $100 camera. It's actually, and it's a 1080p camera, but the fact that it's 1080p doesn't make that big of a difference compared to, we have another one that's a 720p camera, but it's actually several years old. And the difference in quality as far as the ghosting that happens is night and day. So it's, this one here is also running H.264 directly within the camera. And that's going to be a big play later on. If you're actually looking to buy cameras, you want to get one with probably H.264. With the latest thing, it would be nice that if they come out with ones with the VP8 codec, that would be really cool too. And the goal with that one is that if you have that codec directly within your camera, there's no processing or decoding and coding needed, almost all the way to the video card of whoever you're sending it to. That is awesome. That will save a lot on how fast things can happen. And what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to log in here at the Mac. You'll notice when you're actually there, there's that big long string that's underneath the demo. And what that is we call that the EasyRTC ID, and it's a unique identifier for your socket. And so we use that throughout our demos. You can overrule that with your own thing. We actually have the ability for you to set usernames. And there we go. Okay, so what's actually happened here is that I've just logged in with this other system. We're both in the same room. And the moment I've logged in, it now knows I'm in, and it now adds me to the list of who else is in this room. And so we're going to go ahead and click on that connected user. In this case, there's actually no questions as far as are you available or aren't you. Unfortunately, this computer is doing some weird things as far as can I maximize or not. I don't know if you can. Let's see. Yeah, that's a little frustrating. Yeah, it won't even let me go over to the far right. This thing is having some nice little issues. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to try a quick little thing to see if I can reset this. I think it'll be a little bit clearer if we can go on without that. Oh, by the way, would anybody like to have a break in a little bit as well? I realize that we're being in here for a while, but it's, I know it's a long day. But, okay, I'm going to try applying that. Okay. Okay, let's see if that actually worked. Nope. Okay. Yeah, okay, I'll do it the manual way. I just would have, it would be nice not to have to do the left and right. I'm not used to not having access to a full HDMI, 1080p out, and this would be a little bit funkier. Okay, so in this case, here I am right there. And so that should just kind of show just how easy it is for that connection to go. Here, why don't I just kind of show you what kind of is listed there, to see if we can get a dual wave going on. And feel free to actually take a look, see how long it takes for the connection to go through. You should see it's actually fairly responsive. Especially since it's actually all local and such, it's not going anywhere. But even without that, it's a WebRTC pure connection between these two. And one of the things that I wanted to show off here is for each one of these demos, we provide full source code. It's actually right there within the demo. Step by step on, I'm going to go over to the left again. Once again, I'm sorry for the zooming issues. If you want to create this, how do you create this exact same demo? We actually just give you the code, straight off. How do you use the HTML, the CSS, and a JavaScript? Okay, so that's pretty cool.
As for ID, who finds this ID? You assign ID? Or?
Okay, what happens is behind the scenes we're using socket.io currently. As our socket provider, and so by default we use whatever socket.io generates, whatever they give us. However, there is a few use cases where you actually want to bypass socket.io, and that's kind of why we actually wanted to make sure that the ID of the EasyRTC ID was separate from the socket ID. One case potentially is connection issues, where you might actually lose a socket connection and then suddenly regain it, but you might have a brand new connection. But it might be done in a weird way. There's actually some weird, funky ways that can happen that we might still be able to say, no, you're the same connection, and not have to do a full refresh of everything to do with the application. And that's going to be important. This is something that's actually in the future. But this is the cell phone issue. Somebody actually on a cell phone driving along, and they might go from one network to another network, and suddenly, bam, they're suddenly there. How do we actually determine that this person is actually still the same person, even though they either shifted networks or shifted, just turned off and on momentarily? And so that's one of the things we're trying to maintain. It's something that's coming up in the future that's not quite there yet, but we're thinking about it. One of the other things that we need to have is a method for, actually, I'm sorry, I lost my train of thought on that one. I actually had another use case where that would be needed. I was thinking actually as far as a system for where we might need to fake a socket connection for doing like a special type of situation, like maybe a special device or something like that. Okay, so why don't I actually go back and is there any other demos that people are interested in? Why don't I show you how good the HD demo can be? Although this one's a little bit tricky only because I think that it actually highlights what the other camera is capable of. And doesn't actually highlight what your camera is capable of. And unfortunately, the other camera is this one that I don't know how good it's going to get. Okay, we've now got the second user here. I'm going to go ahead and connect. And actually, I guess remember that this here is the good camera. You can see it's actually a really nice, big, it's actually a full 1080. Actually, I think this one's actually 720p picture. And you can kind of, unfortunately, because of how zoomed in this one is, it's impossible to show you how good the HD is on this screen. That's up there. So it's so you actually can have very nice pictures and such, but it's something that's not totally well supported. But you can kind of see where the future lies. Yeah, I don't know if are you guys able to see just how clear that is. I just turned it around, going, wow, it's like a picture. You're right there. Okay, so that's that demo. Why don't I get a start on the security camera demo, where what I wanted to do was show you guys more of a practical application of doing something more customized. And so I was trying to come up with some of the cool things that we could do. And the security camera one kind of came to mind because it's one that, to me, shows a number of reasons why WebRTC is so cool. So what my goal is we're going to create a security application where we're going to have one monitor and a whole bunch of cameras. And if you have a computer that has a camera, I'll actually invite you to even add your own camera onto it. We'll see if we can get a few going on there. And the biggest goal is to see how many we can have added to it and whether or not WebRTC can handle the pressure. And so far I had about 10 of them running all at the same time. And so as a video camera, it worked very well. But even then, you should be able to realize you can only handle so many incoming streams. So we added extra capability onto it. That's going to be kind of the second phase, is we're not going to accept video automatically from these security cameras. We're going to take pictures. So each video camera is going to take a picture every once in a while and send it over to the monitor. And then the monitor is going to display it. And that's all fine until what happens if there's something happening. So also on the camera side, we're going to add some movement detection. So if it actually sees somebody moving, you can have somebody try moving really slowly. There is actually some variance, but we haven't been able to break it too easily. So it's going to send a socket connection, or sorry, a connection to the monitor to say, hey, look at me. And that would allow the monitor application to then take over going, I want to see you, and it would start a live display right there. What that will allow is, if you think about it this way, if you have all these, all these connections, all these cameras everywhere, just sending pictures every once in a while, that means that you can have one monitor now talking to hundreds of cameras potentially. And you might only be able to view a few of them live, but you might only need to view a few of them live. And so that's kind of the next phase. And this is the part where the CEO is like, what, you're going to release that for free? Going, yeah, why not? Okay, so why don't we take a look and see what we have here. I believe I actually still have it over in GitHub. And I actually had some issues with it earlier, so I'm actually glad that I'm here. So I'm actually going to do a quick Git pull. Is everybody here familiar with the Git, what GIT is? Okay, for those that don't, if you're looking for a method for doing source control, it's fantastic. And even if you just do stuff on your own, it's a great way to say, oh, I got a problem, I got to back up, got to go forward, keep notes going. So yeah, so sure enough, yeah, there was an accidental edit. While I was here just perusing and having fun talking to the rest of you, I had one of my cohorts over at the back in Victoria plugging his head in, trying to figure out where one of the bugs was in this. And so what we actually have here in the EasySec land is we actually have three different levels of the demo. We're going to end off with a third one. And by the way, I'm going to be putting this out to GitHub so you can grab it yourself. Right now, it's not actually in the Priologic GitHub, so I'll be putting it out into that one. Okay, so first off, we've got, I'll just run an npm install, make sure we have all the latest modules, although it does look like it's there. Okay, all it's doing is doing some complaining that this application does not have a README file. That's okay, it's just a quick application here. I'm just going to go run this first. I'm going to run it first, and then we're going to take a look and see what it does. And I believe I've got this one set up so it's port 80. Okay, so we've got both a camera and a monitor application here. So why don't I go into the camera and just kind of show you what the camera looks like. I'm going to allow the camera. By the way, this is kind of one of the cool parts, at least within Chrome, is that if you are connecting up to an SSL site, you only have to click allow the first time. After that, it will remember your choice to allow or disallow, and it will not actually ask you again. So that's actually one of the top reasons that if you're even doing a simple demo, you might still want to get something up there on an SSL land. Okay, so here we are. This is our video camera here. Yeah. And why don't we switch over to the monitor view. And this monitor just automatically saw all the cameras that were in that same room. Why don't I add another one here? Okay, so we've got two, and why don't we add a third one here? Let's see if this one will work. Yep. Okay, so we've now actually got 3 live cameras all on this one monitor. And it will actually go on and on and on. As many cameras that join up to this room, it will add more and more and more connections. And it'll perfectly allow you to do that. It will start slowing down after a time. Yes?
So what do you need to run on the
Oh, okay. What I have here, this is a Google Nexus 7. And what I'm running here is just stock Chrome. So this is an in-browser on the Nexus 7, just talking directly like you would.
The local host.
Just, yeah, in this case, it's connected to localhost, but it could be out anywhere. So there's actually absolutely nothing that's special about this this tablet, other than the fact that it's running a later version of Android and Chrome, and it's fairly speedy for handling the video. If you had an earlier version of Nexus 7, it actually ran all this just fine, but it was just a little bit more laggy. So as soon as the new one came out, I painted it orange and went for it.
The I device will not work. The I device will not work.
Okay, for the that's a tricky one, because we get into situations where on the iPhones, for browsers, no, they don't work. But there's a number of companies that are getting in on this, including our own, for having an SDK. We're bypassing the browser, where you can have WebRTC directly within your application. And so there is actually iPhone applications available, including from Priologic. Come on over. Okay. Oh, geez, I'm showing a table here. That's kind of boring. It's a chair. Okay. Okay, so you can see now we've got 3 cameras, and we can actually add more and more and more, but this is kind of boring. Why don't we actually go to the next phase, actually showing off with the motion tracking. And we'll kind of just jump right to that, because I actually want to have some time for questions and such afterwards, rather than going through all the code. I can show you all the code a little bits by bits, but I suspect that I'll go through the code a little bit when we get to the motion tracking, because that is some kind of cool code there. So in this case, why don't we go to the motion tracking one. And okay, so what I just had to do was I had to stop the old server for the one that did not have the motion tracking, because I made it as a completely separate server, just so that we can break things on a per server basis. So I am going to have to actually refresh everything. And actually I'm going to have to potentially do the old Control-Shift refresh to make sure all style sheets and everything got refreshed. So right now, this one actually added a couple extra little styles. Okay, and I'm actually just going to, why is one of them black? I'm just going to refresh the whole page and see what's going on there. Oh, it's okay, it's that one. That's actually, you know what, I'm going to start that all up again. The problem is that there's some issues with, we named many of the files the same way, and so they're just not updating them potentially. I don't know why it thinks that is there. Oh, you know what this is? Okay. Okay, well, we found a bug. This black screen is actually because, for some reason, the Chrome on the Android is not properly sending the picture data. Where this one right here, if you take a look, I'm pointing at my own screen. The second picture that you see there is actually a static photo that is sent from this camera. And it looks like in the case of the Android, the reason why it was black is because it's just for some reason not sending its picture. Why don't we see if we can refresh that and see if we can fix it up. Okay, there, okay. Yeah, it was another caching issue, great. And uh-oh. Okay, we had another bug. Okay, we'll fix that up before releasing to GitHub. Can you tell that I didn't like my photo? There we go. Okay, so, and actually, what it's actually doing is, you notice those red lines, it's able to tell whenever there is motion. And what it's doing is whenever there's motion detection, it then takes a photo and tries to just send that photo just to say, hey, look at me, here's what you might be able to see. It does delay, it doesn't send it as all over and over and over again. But as long as it's red, we can actually go ahead here and just click on the play, and now we actually have opened up a video connection just with that one camera. And then we can go ahead and go, nope, everything's okay with that, and we can go ahead and pause it, and we've now gone back to low bandwidth usage again. And so we can add cameras and add them and add them and add them, and I don't think it would be much of an issue. So what I'm going to do right now is we're going to go to the third way, which makes things look nicer. Okay, so we added a little bit of UI. We've gotten, so it looks a little bit brighter for people who are trying to connect for a monitor. The cameras themselves actually don't really change all that much. And we can continue adding things on and on, and you can kind of see where things would go with that. So do you have any questions as far as the security app goes? Here, actually, I'll go ahead and pause one of them and see if it is actually, nope, doesn't seem to be grabbing the changes as often there. Oh, one of the things I was going to mention is if you're actually trying to do any debugging within Android, one of the top things you should know about is that, or sorry, not within Android, within Chrome, is it's got a remarkable debugging tool that is very powerful, but there's a few cases that you should know about with EasyRTC that you might not know about. So I'm just going to refresh this page, because the refresh part is important, because it only does certain things if the developer's console is available. So what we actually see here is we've got a whole bunch of things as far as messages that are being sent back and forth. There was supposed to be messages whenever there was movement detected, so something's going on there. But what I wanted to kind of show you was in the resources. You see that resources link that's up there? Sorry, it's network. In the network link, there's a link of every single, or there's a list of every single file that's downloaded as part of your application. And one of those has got a status of 101, and that actually represents your WebSocket. And where knowing how to get into the WebSocket is important is you can get in here and you can take a look at the frames. So you can see every single message that EasyRTC sends back and forth. And this is important so that you can actually see what your own messages are. So you'll see here when we first connected in, there's an EasyRTC auth. And then remember I was mentioning where that has to be one of the first things that comes in before it would work. And what I'd recommend you do is get used to actually taking a look at this. It's a little bit weird for copying, because you actually have to double click. I don't know if you saw that, but I double clicked on that line, and I actually Control-C or just right click to copy. And I bring that into a program where I can just paste it. And this is full JSON, so it's easily parsable. And I'm going to press a couple magic buttons on my keyboard, and it actually formats it so I can actually see visually nicely what's actually going on. And knowing how to do that, if you're actually trying to do some development, it's kind of nifty to be able to go back and forth going, okay, what's actually going on behind the scenes? So what you actually see here is the token for who all is in the room and what they're doing and what their presence is, whether or not they want to chat or not, if they have any usernames. One thing you'll note in this application is that we have the cameras and the monitors given their own username. So all the cameras are given the username cam, and all the monitors are given the username monitor. So we have logic based on what that username is within the JavaScript app itself. So why don't I actually close that off, and I was going to show you here. You can see there's actually a get snapshot and a sending snapshot. This one's an interesting thing because it kind of shows how, within a messaging, how that image is getting transferred from one person to the other. So in this case, the camera is actually taking a look at the canvas. It's using a system called the canvas within the DOM, where it's able to set this a certain area to the canvas and say, you can now be saved as a .jpeg, and it's converting it, and then it's setting it as a string, and converting it over to base 64, which then can be sent through messaging. And then within EasyRTC, we can then handle that and go, okay, you want to send this. EasyRTC doesn't care if it's a picture. All it sees is that it's a string that's associated with this message type, a snapshot. But you notice that this is actually an EasyRTC message, so this is an application thing. So within the code on the client side, we actually have things where on the server, on the monitor, we have a listener that is listening for messages from peers. And upon getting a message from a peer, it goes, okay, what type of message are you? You're a snapshot from this EasyRTC ID. Then I will take that snapshot and put it into this box. And so that's kind of how that's happening for the snapshot portion of it. And is there any questions as far as the security app? I'm just willing. Oh, okay, yes. Yes. Okay. Remember before, one of the reasons for using WebRTC is the fact that it can connect up to other new technologies, including the WebGL and the web audio. So within WebGL, there's actually people who have actually done the face tracking in JavaScript. For movement detection, so they've got it so that who's where, kind of like the Xbox Connect, where you can kind of move your arms around. They've got that working within a JavaScript framework, which is kind of cool. I would love to see that developed more and be released. That would be kind of a neat thing. As far as the face detection goes, I've seen demos of people working on that sort of thing within WebRTC. I don't see any reason why it wouldn't work. But I haven't actually seen anything quite released on it yet.
So what's the common between the WebRTC and WebGL?
Okay, well, the WebGL, remember that WebRTC deals with video streams. And, but WebGL allows you to change pictures. But there's no reason why those pictures can't be frames in the video. So you can set things up so it actually can do some pretty funky things with that video before and after you send it.
So you take the frame from the video stream and then send it to WebGL to process it.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that.
Yes. Yeah, as far as I'm aware, I believe that will work. Yeah, okay, I got a yes on the resending. Great. Yeah, like I said, I'm on the server side, but I've seen all these cool things that are going out there going, okay, that would be awesome to see.
What some folks are doing is that, so like WebRTC, you can stream like a blob to a video camera in HTML5, but you could also do like Rob was saying, you could take lots of snapshots, push those to canvas at like 60, 70, 80 frames per second, and actually record to canvas or stretch it or put add effects, as Rob was saying, all live. Thank you.
Yeah. By the way, as far as the motion detection goes, we actually had another project where we actually were using the WebGL for motion detection, and we found it far faster to do the canvas method. So it's yes.
Piggybacking on facial recognition, you really don't need motion for facial recognition. All you need is just a single snapshot anyway.
That is true. I would imagine although from what I understand with facial recognition, it's getting to the point where they're not just looking at the snapshots, but also the movement and such. That it's.
You wouldn't need much bandwidth. You'd need, a series of, a dozen pictures to capture random facial movement.
And when it comes to the facial recognition, I'm sure that this is something that could be potentially done on the browser side, but I think it would be on the security-wise, I think it would be a dangerous thing because then you're leaving it up to the browser to say, yes, my face is proper, which is could be an issue. So I would suspect that for facial recognition, it would be something for actually pumping the live video or live, at least snapshots over to a server somewhere.
There's some node NPM modules like proof of concept that folks are working on to serve GitHub. You might find that.
And by the way, you can change the frame rate. So I mean, for your facial recognition, you change the frame rate. You make the frame rate so it's 2 frames per second, so you get some movement between the frames, but relatively low bandwidth and number of frames. So it's very interesting to use like that.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, if I assume he's talking about a security application, which you would be, you'd want to capture, say, a dozen pictures, run them to a server that's got facial recognition software. And because, I mean, basically what you'd be looking for is somebody you didn't want in an area. And so, or you'd just be looking, yeah, real quick, like, those 5 people, yeah, they're probably okay, but this person definitely is not okay.
You can identify the nameless cat in red face or
Or, for example, you could, in a conference, you could use that as a mission control as well.
Yeah, but again, it's not really super video intensive. It's,
What time does this one end?
capturing reasonably high resolution.
I didn't even double check.
That's okay. We should start the next one. You stay?
Yeah, I'm staying for
Just
this.
segue right into the.
Okay. So when is it? Is it right now or?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Okay.
Start at 7:10.
Okay.
Let's just segue right into it, and Chris is going to hook up Peter.
Oh, okay.
Just tell him what that will just.
Okay, yeah, so it looks like we are segueing into the power panel. But why don't I just kind of go through a couple of while these other guys are actually getting set up, why don't I just kind of walk through with a couple of the things on the baby monitor front. We actually have somebody who used EasyRTC in order to make a baby monitor, and they made a full blog on it, including step-by-step on how to do some of the Canvas stuff, and so that's available there. Okay. Oh, I didn't really want to kind of go into, I could see everybody was kind of falling asleep, so I didn't bother going into some of the authentication methods. Although I did kind of want to kind of mention that one of the new features of the EasyRTC is some of the more powerful ways you can control who is actually coming in and what they're allowed to do. And you can control them on all sorts of different methods. Configuration, talk.com, please go ahead and try it out. One of the things I was talking about was, or I was asked at the very beginning as far as the architecture goes. On talk.com, we've got systems where we've got turn servers, we've got load balancing, we've got databases going on different logging situations, and so on. So it's actually on multiple servers in a situation where hopefully we can handle lots of traffic. So that's coming forward. Go ahead and try it out. It's perfectly free. And yeah, that's it. So while he's getting set up, is there any other questions? Oh, geez. Okay, yeah. What ended up happening was, why don't I actually just remove this part? We're over in booth 120 over in the showroom, by the way. That's not really working. I'm not used to having only a couple inches on the ribbon. Oh well. No.
Maybe it's maximize it.
Yeah, I guess so. Well, what is it? How do you do to maximize without it going to the beginning? I always forget that part. Is it Alt F5 or something? No. Oh well. That'll work too. Oh, crap.
You want to use that one, or do we try to use his?
Either way, I've got this one ready, I just need the Ethernet cable.
Yeah, why don't we
Actually-
plug it in, because you have the URL in there, and his, and then we can get Peter here. And then you've got that mic, you can keep that, that's fine.
Yes, I need the
And I'm
VGA
not sure
cable.
if we have
You did a great job, Rob.
Oh, thank you.
here.
Okay, disconnecting.
Thank you.